Industrial control systems. What is ICSSCADA? So ICS is industrial control systems. Think of an ICS as a local process. You're monitoring and controlling a local industrial process. What does that mean? So let's say you have a car manufacturing plant. And in that plant, you have some industrial processes, such as, let's say, the painting process that's used to paint the different car parts. So that process is local. It's within a building, within a plant, and you're using an ICS to monitor and control that local process. So now you have SCADA, which stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. What's the difference between an ICS and a SCADA? Pretty much the difference is ICS is local. SCADA is remote control and monitoring of an industrial process. What does that mean? So let's give the electric power grid as an example. That's where my background comes from. So you have an energy control center. And at that control center, you will use SCADA software and hardware to monitor and control an industrial process that could be miles and miles away from that control center. Specifically, you'll have substations that could be miles and miles away from the control center. And you're using SCADA to gather data, telemetry from those remote substation sites and gathering that data and getting it back to the control center so that it can be monitored and controlled via SCADA. So always remember, ICS is local and SCADA is remote. A safety instrumented system, or SIS. So we talked about ICS. Think of an SIS as a safety system for an ICS. What does that mean? Let's say you have a pipeline, and that pipeline cannot exceed a certain value of pressure. If it does exceed a certain value of pressure, that pipeline can burst. The SIS will utilize threshold values. So it will monitor the threshold value of that pipeline to make sure that the pressure does not exceed that threshold value. If it does, it will safely shut down the process so that that pipeline does not burst. This is a simplified example, but basically that is what an SIS is. And then you have building management systems, or building automation systems, BAS. Think of these as industrial processes to monitor and control processes within the building, such as heating, cooling. You could also monitor and control the building security, access control, door locks. You can use it to monitor the power quality for that building, the power metering for billing purposes of the building. So pretty much any type of automation system for a building is what a BAS is. And the list goes on. When we're talking about ICSSCADA, there's various industries that use these technologies. For example, food processing You can have a food processing plant that's creating a juice. And that juice needs a certain amount of ingredients to be mixed at a certain amount of time, or a specific time, or it also needs to be mixed at a certain temperature. You would use ICS to do that. Same goes for pharmaceutical. When you're creating drugs, you need to mix them appropriately, and it needs to be monitored and controlled, and it has to be safe because you're dealing with human safety, human life. And we covered the manufacturing, the car manufacturing example. You also have electric power generation plants where the power is generated. And you have petrochemical plants, water and sewer treatment plants, and many, many more. But these are just a few examples of the ICSSCADA industries.